You see everybody trying to address it because it is such a rampant problem.
There's definitely been an increase in the number of spam calls, spoof calls that Canadians are getting.
New technology is on the way to filter out those frustrating spam calls, but will it be enough to put a dent in what some say has become an epidemic? It's less than a month until a federal deadline for telecom providers to crack down on spam calls. And for many Canadians, it's needed now more than ever, with more and more people saying they're getting dialed up by these sketchy callers. Lauren Pelly joins us live now with more on this. And Lauren, I got a call about an hour ago, so who's accountable for all of this?
I actually got one today, too. It happens to all of us all the time. And there's a lot of players involved in this. There's the scammers who are calling most of our phones day and night now. There's the telecom providers who are connecting those calls. And of course, there's federal regulators. And as you know, as we all know, this is happening more and more and more. So how do we fix it? Scam calls seem to be getting more and more common, and they're coming from numbers claiming to be anything from a duct cleaning company to an airline to the Canada Revenue Agency.
I actually received a call this morning from the CRA saying I owed a lot of money to them, and if I didn't give it to them, I would suffer like severe repercussions.
And there's maybe, 3 of this whole list that are actually legitimate. The rest are illegitimate.
These 2 scam call victims aren't just random people we found, they're actually tech experts.
A lot of the time you feel rushed when you're called, you're induced to either give your social insurance number, your credit card number, or some type of financial details, which can be used to impersonate you.
It's easy to spoof a call, make it look like it's coming from a friend or a relative.
So who's accountable for all those sneaky scammers getting through? On one hand, there are the companies you pay to connect your calls. Then there's the federal government's Canadian Radio, Television and Telecommunications Commission, or the CRTC.
We have been working to combat those calls that people are receiving.
The commission set a deadline of December 19th for mobile carriers to launch call blocking technology.
We had asked them to come with innovative and creative measures.
For clear-cut scams, Bell and Rogers are bringing in universal call blocking, while TELUS is rolling out a call filtering service. Meanwhile, an American app called RoboKiller recently entered the market, offering cell phone users another way to fight scammers.
We block those calls, and then what we do is we actually answer those calls in the background with something we call answer bots. Answer bots are robots that actually talk back to the spammers and waste their time, so you can get a little revenge and get even.
But even with all those tools, it's not an easy problem to solve.
Especially because a lot of the calls originate outside of Canada.
Definitely the government should be accountable. The telcos should be accountable.
So there's also this personal accountability piece as well. If you get one of these spam calls, it's best to just not answer it. But if you do answer, make sure you don't give any personal identification, any financial details, or your SIN number. And also, don't do what they say. If they ask you to dial a certain number on your PIN pad, that could lead you to an international call with hefty charges. All of these things are things you should keep aware of. And if your gut's telling you that something seems like a spam trap, it probably is. Dwight?
And you're probably right. Thank you, Lauren. The Toronto woman who threw a chair over a condo balcony pleaded guilty in court today. The Crown prosecutors are seeking a maximum of 6 months in jail for Marcella Zoya. Linda Ward has the latest.
19-year-old Marcella Zoya pleaded guilty today to 1 count of mischief endangering life. Standing before the court, dressed all in black, looking solemn, she admitted she was the one seen in that viral video from back in February, holding a folding chair, peering over the balcony of a Bremner high-rise, then tossing that chair over the railing directly above Lakeshore Boulevard and the Gardner Expressway. That video was played in court today. Then the Crown said that she was seeking a maximum 6-month prison term. Now, the last time Zoya was in court back in February, she appeared not to mind the media attention. But today, she shied away from the cameras and instead jumped into a waiting vehicle. Her lawyer spoke on her behalf, reacting to the possibility of jail time.
I think that's excessive. very much so. We have to remember Marcella is 19 years of age. When you deal with somebody so young, in my opinion, they're not fully developed. The brain's not fully developed. She was still a young lady at that time. She made a mistake. I think jail is far excessive, and we'll be asking for a suspended sentence.
That means essentially probation with some conditions. He says it's important to remember that his client did turn herself into police and that she will likely face some travel restrictions to the United States that will affect her ability to work. But he's also aware that Zoya has enjoyed some notoriety on social media since the offense. The judge will likely want the sentence to reflect how dangerous this crime was, as well as deter others from seeking out their few minutes of social media stardom with similar stunts in the future. Zoya will learn her sentence back here in this court on January 14th. Linda Ward, CBC News, Toronto.
There is no 8-story condo above this family business, but the owners are getting charged as if there was. Jaime Poivert coming up will look at that issue and the new push to try and change those rules.
Condo development proposals aren't always popular, as they often mark the gentrification of neighborhoods. The latest development in Chinatown has caused a stir. Let's go live to Ali Hassan. She's in Chinatown for us tonight. So, Ali, what's this community saying about this particular development?
Well, Dwight, as with any community, there's people who have their concerns over these proposals, and oftentimes that gets taken out on the development proposal signage. But this is an example of conscious outreach. A local community group here made their own sign translating some of the details about the condo that's proposed here. It's not anti-development, it's pro-communication. Have a listen.
It's kind of genius. It looks exactly like a City of Toronto development sign, like different colors, some dim sum here in bok choy, but also more importantly,
the translation. We just noticed that the sign that the city put up, the one just over there in front of Rolstan, was not translated.
the construction of a proposed mid-rise condo in the heart of Chinatown would displace 13 locally owned businesses, including ever-popular dim sum spot Rolstan. Don't you think locals should have a say?
Like, this is a predominantly Chinese-speaking neighborhood.
There is a public meeting scheduled for next Tuesday at 6 p.m., although you wouldn't know that by looking at the city's signage, and even still.
Neither the developer or the city has included translators at the public consultation meeting. We had to specifically request for them.
The city has raised some potential issues with the building. 13 stories equals a lot of people living in half a block, putting a strain on utilities, and it will cast a shadow on nearby properties. But other than that, Councillor Mike Layton says it's not out of step with what's allowed.
It's proposed rental, which is a positive by and large, but we do want to do what we can to ensure that those are livable units, that they're affordable units, and that they're accessible to people that currently live in the neighborhood as well as future new neighbors.
As for the sign,
it's nice when people use humor rather than just defacing it with graffiti.
Thinking about like the recent examples of like development in Chinatown, like the one across the street here had a lot of history to it, and then look at what's sitting there. Yeah. Not only is it a gray box, it's empty.
My parents, when they first immigrated here, this was like the closest thing they had to home, you know, and it's always served people like my parents, and will always continue to serve people like my parents. And to see buildings like that sit there, or to see a 13-story development proposal not consider this neighborhood, it stops serving the people that it's always served.
This plaza isn't a heritage building, but this is not about preserving architecture. It's about making and keeping space for local businesses and local people to thrive here in Chinatown. This weekend, the Friends of Chinatown organization that made the development proposal sign will be out canvassing and encouraging people to take part in the community meetings going forward so they can have their say. Send it back to you.
Thank you, Ali. And you saw Ali was all bundled up there. She had the toque, the puffy jacket, but Doesn't seem that bad out there today, is it, Colin?
Yeah, it wasn't that bad out there today, Dwight. We got a little reprieve, you're right, but I'm glad she's bundled up. We all need to, because that cold air is coming back in tonight. So, for example, 6 a.m. this morning, the wind chill, -6. Well, by 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, we'll be looking at a wind chill of -18, in some cases around the GTA feeling like -20. That is why there is an extreme cold weather alert back in place that's been issued by the city as this cold air makes its way in. Oh, 2 degrees. We were up to 3 degrees, and that was so pleasant. It's way below our seasonal high at this time of year of 7, but it was a nice change to have those temperatures go above the freezing mark. We're not looking at active weather per se, that cold front as it kind of passes through, a few flurries possible, but really it's going to be clearing our skies out overnight tonight and setting us up for a lot of sunshine into the weekend as well because of that high pressure. However, I just want to point out that as the front goes through and we get into a northeasterly flow, so those winds coming across the lake, as we go towards tomorrow morning, a few pockets with some extra cloud cover and a little bit of lake effect, very, very light snow or flurry activity, not accumulating, but that'll kind of rotate around, and by the afternoon, a risk of it pushing through the rest of the GTA. But mostly, it's going to be sunshine. That'll be nice. Still going to be on the cold side, but a warm-up is coming, so I'm going to tell you about that when I come back. For now, know that overnight tonight, the thermometer will read -11, the wind chill -20, and tomorrow we climb to -3 for our high, Dwight.
-3 is not really a high, call it.
I know, it's a low high.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
The man charged with vandalizing the old City Hall cenotaph is out on bail tonight. On Tuesday, someone spray painted the words "Ye broke faith with us" on the front and back of the cenotaph, the words referencing the John McCrae poem in Flanders Fields. The vandalism coming the day after Remembrance Day. Ceremonies were held at the monument. 33-year-old Christian Zog of Toronto appeared in court earlier today. He is facing a mischief charge. Disorderly conduct and disruptive behavior charges against Toronto Maple Leafs star Austin Matthews have been dismissed.
I just want to reiterate again just how truly sorry I am for my actions, my behavior. I never meant to cause any distress to this woman, and I can assure you that I've learned from my mistakes and my actions.
The charges stem from an incident involving Matthews in his hometown of Scottsdale, Arizona earlier this year. According to the police report, a female security guard at a condo complex said Matthews and a group of males tried to open her vehicle as she sat inside doing paperwork at 2 in the morning. The report says the guard got out of her car to confront Matthews. He walked away but dropped his pants and grabbed his buttocks as he did so. Arizona law allows a person accused of a misdemeanor and the affected party to settle the matter directly. Like it or not, Saturday nights in Canada will never be the same. Starting tomorrow night, the post-Don Cherry era of Hockey Night in Canada begins. The outspoken analyst was fired earlier this week after making controversial comments. Greg Ross takes a look at what the future holds for Cherry's popular first intermission time slot.
For the past 38 years, he's been broadcast into millions of Canadian homes on Saturday nights. But that all changed after Don Cherry said this.
You people love you that come here, whatever it is. You love our way of life. You love our milk and honey.
Cherry was fired by Rogers Sportsnet after blaming New Canadians for a decline in poppy sales, remarks many viewed as divisive and racist. As a result, this weekend, a new era begins, and that has hockey fans divided.
Will you miss Don Cherry?
Honestly, not all that much, no. I think he had his time, and maybe it's time for a fresh voice.
Not especially. You know, he was a character, but his time has come and gone.
You're definitely going to miss Don Cherry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Saturday night. It's part of it.
Don Cherry was it. Saturday night, you sit down, you watch Ron MacLean and Don Cherry.
Regardless of where they stand on the issue, TV critic Bill Brio expects they will tune in this weekend.
Everybody wants to know what's going to happen, and there'll be a lot of curiosity, and yeah, the ratings will spike this Saturday during that segment.
Many names have been rumored as possible replacements for Cherry, including a former general manager for the Leafs.
They've already got Brian Burke. There's air in the spare, right? You know, he's on the bench. He can go in.
Whoever it is, they will have big shoes to fill.
It could be a career killer. Look what happened to George Stroumboulopoulos. You know, they thought they could just drop him in as the new anchor host of Hockey Night in Canada. It was the wrong fit.
Which is why Brio thinks the best option might be to go in a completely different direction.
I think it's to be a mistake to go down the same road. It's an opportunity to relaunch, refresh, and program something that my son would want to watch.
Producers at Sportsnet have been tight-lipped about their plans for the future of the first intermission on Hockey Night in Canada. But Cherry's co-host on Coach's Corner, Ron McLean, tweeted today that he will still be a part of it. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
I'm just really appreciative of people they choose me to this kind of team.
He was the first hockey player to defect to North America. Now Vaslav Nermansky is being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. I speak to him about his journey and what this honor means to him. We'll bring you that conversation a little later in the show. The second day of public testimony wrapped up this afternoon in the inquiry into whether the U.S. president should be impeached. It was the former American ambassador to Ukraine, Maria Yovanovitch's turn today. Donald Trump fired her back in May, and as Ellen Morrow tells us, the early part of the hearing was overshadowed by a tweet from Trump.
Marie Yovanovitch, the ousted ambassador to Ukraine, said she was the victim of a months-long smear campaign led by President Trump's personal lawyer, Rudy Giuliani.
I obviously don't dispute that the president has the right to withdraw an ambassador at any time for any reason. But what I do wonder is why it was necessary to smear my reputation.
Democrats say Yovanovitch was removed because she was getting in the way of Giuliani and President Trump's efforts to pressure the Ukrainian government to launch investigations into potential Trump 2020 rival Joe Biden and his family. Trump attacked Yovanovitch on Twitter as she was testifying on Capitol Hill. Criticizing her foreign service, the president wrote, "Everywhere Marie Yovanovitch went turned bad."
I actually think that where I've served over the years, I and others have demonstrably made things better.
Democrats accuse the president of witness tampering.
It was also a part, frankly, of the pattern to obstruct justice. And so we need to view the president's actions today as part of a broader and incriminating pattern of conduct.
Not so, he said.
When we have great Republican representatives, people elected by the people, and they're not allowed to even ask a question, they're not allowed to make a statement, we're not allowed to have witnesses, we're not allowed to have legal counsel, White House counsel, it's a disgrace and it's an embarrassment to our nation.
Republicans on the committee say Yovanovitch's testimony amounts to hearsay. They argue President Trump did nothing wrong and that the hearings are a waste of time.
I'm not exactly sure what the ambassador is doing here today. This is the House Intelligence Committee that's now turned into the House Impeachment Committee. This seems more appropriate for the Subcommittee on Human Resources at the Foreign Affairs Committee.
And the stark partisanship and strong language on both sides will only get more intense, with more witnesses set to testify in front of the cameras here on Capitol Hill next week. Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Washington.
Donald Trump's longtime ally, Roger Stone, has been found guilty of witness tampering by a jury in Washington. Stone was convicted of 7 counts in total, including lying to U.S. lawmakers and obstructing an investigation. That last one had to do with the House intelligence probe that was looking into whether the Trump campaign coordinated with Russia to influence the 2016 presidential election. Stone is the 6th Trump aide or advisor to be convicted of charges following the Mueller investigation.
1 tablespoon of coconut oil has 13 grams of saturated fat.
That's the opposite of healthy.
It has more saturated fat than lard or butter. Marketplace reveals the truth about coconut oil, and we get a preview of their investigation coming up a little later in the show. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Hockey superstars who got the call from the Hall months ago finally got their hardware today in the annual Hockey Hall of Fame ring presentation. Those among the class of 2019, our four-time Olympic gold medalist, Haley Wickenheiser.
Well, being in the hall, Jim and I were just saying, like, look at all the names on the wall of a lot of these folks I didn't know, but I certainly grew up idolizing and watching in the game of hockey. I didn't have female hockey players to look up to. And so as I stand here today, I can say that that's changed a lot. And that feels really great to be amongst the best in the game and knowing that there's a place for a little girl somewhere and anywhere in the world to do the same.
Yes, ma'am. Wickenheiser and 5 others will be inducted into the Hall of Fame on Monday. Joining her is Guy Carbonneau, 3-time Stanley Cup winner, and Sergei Zubov, who played 16 seasons in the NHL, and builders Jim Rutherford and Jerry York, along with Vaslav Nedomansky. I spoke to Big Ned earlier today about the honor and what it was like being the first hockey player to defect from the Soviet Union.
It was a combination of passports. They stopped me. They didn't allow me to go to hockey camp to Germany. I found out and they told me that I cannot travel for the next 5 years.
Because they were worried about you trying to leave.
And I used my personal passport just to get 2-week vacation, and I had 2 weeks time when I contacted a couple of teams here and they make agreement with them.
Was it a hockey decision or was it a life decision? Because you just wanted a better life, you felt?
No, it was both, because I always dreamed to play National Hockey League.
Yes.
And that's athlete's decision. And also like to have for me and for my family to live life in freedom. Then it's combination of both.
How did the players here respond to you when you got here?
Well, some of them, they would know me. Then they just, I had good reputation.
I mean, they must have known of you from the World Championships, and you're a famous player.
No, but some guys, they coming out of juniors, they're very young and they may not follow hockey the way I do.
Yeah.
I really follow hockey since I was 12 years old, and I just try to memorize players and names, and I think that history is part of the sport.
You knew all the greats before you got to the NHL.
I didn't know.
Talk about your NHL career. Were you even surprised at how well you were able to do against these young kids?
No, I have no other choice. It was just desperate. I knew if I'm going to be well trained and no injury, I will do well. I had good confidence.
You had that confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
How are you feeling today, knowing that you are a member of the Hockey Hall of Fame? Look around at these names. You said you know the history, you study the history.
Yeah.
Now you are part of the history. Kids are going to come here and look at you.
I know. No, it is fantastic. I'm just really appreciative of people. They choose me to this kind of team, and it is an incredible honor to be here.
Have you returned home? Have you been back home and after all of this and kind of reminisced about
I don't feel at home. I feel home here.
This is home.
North American, and I would go to Czechoslovakia or Czech Republic or Slovak because of job. I was in scouting for over 30 years.
Yeah.
And I would go for job, but my parents, they don't live anymore, and friends. It is not really friendship if you don't live there for 45 years. Then I have my friends with former players and former management people and people which I not find out here later on.
I think I know the answer to the question, but looking back, would you do it all over again?
Yes.
100%.
No regrets, 100%.
Well, we're glad you did it, and congratulations on being inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. It's a great honor.
Thank you. Great.
Just its physical presence has taken up a footprint on the seafloor, which is a loss of potential habitat for marine creatures.
Counting all the junk at the bottom of the Bay of Fundy, this shocking number coming up. They are small businesses with huge property tax bills. Due to skyrocketing property values in Toronto, some of these businesses pay the taxes of multi-story condos, and today a push to do something about that, as business owners and councillors were at City Hall calling for action and relief. Nick Boisvert has more.
With snow on the ground and holiday shopping getting started, it's supposed to be a great time of the year at Bonnie DeMerlis' ski shop. But right now, she's preoccupied.
We've been on this block for 57 years, so I really don't want to have to leave.
Her store is a typical 2-story building near Yonge and Lawrence, but for tax purposes, it's considered an 8-story condo. That's because of a provincial system that sets taxes based on the so-called highest and best use of a property. The resulting tax bill is nearly $130,000 a year.
We'll have to relocate the business and sell the building. That's the upshot of all of this. And that makes me feel sick, actually.
Today at City Hall, her local councillor announced a new campaign to help her out.
The example of Bonnie is an example that can be carried right across our city.
Mike Cole is calling on the Ford government to fix what he calls the unfair condo tax. He's expecting some resistance.
They don't like to change tax policy because it's like a ripple effect. You change one piece of it, you have to change 1,000 pieces.
In a statement to CBC, a provincial spokesperson said, "We understand the importance of this issue to the business community and are committed to a well-functioning property tax and assessment system." She also mentioned tax breaks that could save businesses up to $1,500 a year. DeMerlis sent multiple letters and emails to the government, but didn't hear anything until they responded to us. Is this the first time you've seen a response from this government on what you're asking about?
Yes. Yeah.
How does that feel?
I may be more poised if I thought about it for 24 hours, but no, I feel ill that anybody could think that that's fair. Our taxes have gone up 300%, and they're offering us 1%.
The Ford government says it is planning a comprehensive review of the tax rules, but the next round of assessments is happening in 2020. Nick Boisvert, CBC News, Toronto.
The flag of the Métis Nation of Ontario was raised at City Hall today in honor of Louis Riel Day.
It's the oldest flag in Canada, and it really does symbolize that lasting legacy of Riel and the Métis people in this country and the role that we've played. It also talks about the role that we will play moving forward into the future as we are finally now getting recognition and respect for our rights.
Riel was one of the most famous leaders of the Métis Nation. This year marks the 150th anniversary of the Red River Resistance that was led by Riel and of his wrongful execution in 1885. November 16th is proclaimed Louis Riel Day in Toronto and right across Canada. Although she's no longer the Green Party leader, Elizabeth May remains the parliamentary leader for the Greens, and as such, she met today with Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to talk about shared priorities ahead. She says while there's much common ground on budget bills or votes of confidence, Greens can't support a government that backs pipeline expansion.
Any place where we can work together, we will. But you can't vote confidence in a government that has a plan for global destruction, which I'm afraid we do.
The Greens have 3 seats in the Commons. May says her talk with Trudeau leads her to believe he will be naming a new environment minister for the next sitting. She also says Trudeau told her the Liberal minority will be bringing back the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People. It calls on governments to secure the consent of Indigenous people on matters of general public policy. An earlier private member's bill on that issue was defeated. Venice is sinking under an even higher tidal surge today that's left more than 80% of the city flooded. It's all happening as high water forced city councillors to flee their chambers moments after they voted against combating high CO2 emissions.
It's a shame because we lose business, we lose local business, we lose artistic treasures that we're never going to get back, unfortunately.
Residents in the famed UNESCO World Heritage Site are enduring the worst flooding in more than 50 years. Many waterlogged tourist venues, restaurants, hotels, and shops have been forced to close. Water ferries stopped running and gondoliers have had to leave their boats tied up. Damage is estimated in the millions of dollars. The city's flood defense system has been under construction for 16 years and will not be functional until 2021. For the first time ever, researchers have tried to count all the junk lying on the seafloor in Atlantic Canada. Their new study estimates that upwards of 2 million pieces of garbage rest at the bottom of the Bay of Fundy, the vast majority plastics and fishing gear. Paul Withers has more.
It started as a study to map habitat of the entire seafloor of the Bay of Fundy, but something else started creeping into the picture.
It couldn't help notice or ignore the fact that they started to encounter benthic marine debris in their video footage as well as their camera stills.
Dalhousie University researchers Tony Walker and Angela Goodman were brought in. They reviewed debris seen at 281 locations throughout the Bay of Fundy over a 3-year period that included combing through 33 hours of video.
What struck you as you were looking through this footage?
The amount of garbage bags that we were finding, mostly partially covered, so it was hard to tell how long they've been there for.
They published their own study this week in Marine Pollution Bulletin, reporting 51% of the debris was plastics, 28% abandoned, lost, or discarded fishing gear. The rest was cable, metals, and tires. They estimate an average of 137 items of debris per square kilometer.
We know the area of the Bay of Fundy, and so that does extrapolate out to 1.8 million pieces, and likely to be an underestimate based on what Alexa was saying. Sometimes this material is buried.
Most of the items were found within 9 kilometers of shore, pollution that normally remains hidden until it washes up on coastlines like this one. They did not see examples of ghost fishing gear. That's when lost gear continues to capture and kill marine life, nor plastics harming marine life. Still, the study concludes seafloor debris is numerous and widespread in the Bay of Fundy.
Just its physical presence has taken up a footprint on the seafloor, which is a loss of potential habitat for marine creatures and marine organisms, which is one thing. But we also know from other studies around the world that there's over 2,000 species that have been either ingested or entangled in plastics.
The public, I think policymakers, and I think industry needs to be able to see this first-handedly, because images go a long way. I think this can be very valuable in helping improve policy.
Plastics and lost fishing gear are a recognized pollution problem, but out of sight, out of mind. The authors hope their report will help change that. Paul Withers, CBC News, Halifax.
Hopefully some folks will pay attention to that study. We are paying attention for a cold weather alert, Colette?
Yeah, it makes you stand up and pay attention when we see the air this cold, and especially the wind chills that we're getting. So an extreme cold weather alert in place for the city for tonight as those wind chills drop to close to -20, and you got to deal with that into tomorrow morning as well. Easterly wind lake effect, that's kind of for Saturday. So east to northeasterly wind means a few pockets will get a little bit extra cloud cover and even a burst of flurries possible just because of the relatively warmer waters of the lake, but that's about it. Otherwise, we just don't have much active weather, and that'll be nice for a change for a weekend and a sunny visit for Santa Claus as he's coming to town on Sunday. So that's nice as well. These are our current temperatures, and with the temperatures and the wind directions, you can really tell where this cold front is, which is the leading edge of this next air mass, this pocket of colder air that's pushing towards us. You got your -2 and Barrie, -1 in Mount Forest, but then Toronto at 2, Hamilton at the freezing mark. So slightly warmer temperatures here, cooler to the northwest of us. I know that's not that unusual, but you can look at the winds. There are that northwesterly flow, and that's starting to turn at Toronto as well. Hamilton, though, St. Catharines, still more of a west to southwest, so that front is just kind of pushing through the GTA right now. So that cold air that's going to move in, at least it's coming accompanied high pressure, and so that's why we won't see much in the way of active weather, and we'll get some sunshine into this weekend too, so that's going to be very welcome. But the cold air kind of hangs in there tonight, tomorrow, and then into Sunday we start to be relieved of that. So there you see with that breeze coming in off the lake that you could get a little pocket there towards Hamilton, Burlington area, pushing around. Later in the day towards the GTA, there's even that risk of seeing a few flurries, but primarily, again, it's going to be some sunshine, just some variable cloud at times. overnight tonight, a look at these temperatures. There's a reason for the extreme cold weather alert. -11, -12 in Markham, -10 for St. Catharines. Wind chills feeling -18 to -20. So with this air in place, it means tomorrow we're not going to be able, like today, to climb up above the freezing mark. So -3 in Markham, Mississauga, -2 in Hamilton. May get that little shot of some light flurries, not accumulating and short-lived. And St. Catharines slightly milder for you there. Let's take a little time here on the 5-day forecast, show you that we're going to about 1 degree on Sunday. Again, it's going to be with clear skies, so that's going to be just a very pretty day. But if you look at those temperatures next week, Dwight, it's slow. I know it's still below seasonal, but it's going in the right direction.
Yes, it is, and we will take it. Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
For several years now, the country's criminal justice system has been scrambling to meet an 18-month time limit to bring an accused to trial. And today, the Supreme Court ruled the same time frame, not shorter, should also apply to cases involving youth. That ruling came as the top court dismissed the appeal of a young Albertan known as KJM, who was charged and later convicted in a stabbing at a house party in 2015. It took more than 18 months for his case to be resolved. His lawyer had argued that timely trials are crucial for minors because children develop, mature, and change their behavior in a relatively short time, and that a 12-month limit would be more appropriate for young people. But today the court ruled 5-4 that KJM's case hadn't been unreasonably long and struck down his appeal. The 18-month time limit was part of a landmark ruling in 2016 known as the Jordan ruling. The Supreme Court found then that unreasonable delays in criminal cases violate the Charter of Rights. As we head to break, here's a look at where the markets closed today. The TSX was up by over 56 points. The Dow Jones also up by almost 223, and the Canadian dollar traded for an average of 75 cents US. Stay with us. We will be right back. It's become commonplace at the grocery store. Coconut oil, people cook with it, bake with it, even put it in their coffee as a seemingly healthy alternative. But is it as good for us as we think? Marketplace checks out the food facts tonight. Asha Tomlinson has more.
You don't have to look far to find people who believe that coconut oil is a healthy option. In fact, at this Toronto grocery store, we found quite a few shoppers who use coconut oil to cook with, bake with, One shopper even puts it in his coffee every day. So we wondered how this big health trend started. It really kicked off after a study was published back in 2003. But that study didn't even look at coconut oil. Here's what author and researcher Marie-Pierre Saint-Onge told us.
We were testing MCT oil. It's very purified form.
MCT stands for medium chain triglycerides. Saint-Onge found that it made a small difference in weight loss for overweight people.
MCT is a subcomponent of coconut oil, and only 15% of coconut oil is MCT. It's often picked up as being a study that promotes coconut oil, but in fact they're completely different.
Somehow it became a health craze.
It's unfortunate that coconut oil has been given this health halo.
The coconut oil companies in our story say new science shows the saturated fat in coconut oil doesn't have the same negative health effects as the kind in animal fats like lard and butter. They say it has health benefits, but experts we talk to say there's not enough evidence to support that. So, how much should we really be eating? Dietitian Andrea Miller gives some food for thought.
Our heart health guidelines are that we should be keeping the total saturated fat content of our diet down around 10%. So if we're putting coconut oil in our coffee or spreading it on our toast, chances are we're way overstretching that saturated fat recommendation.
And research shows that a diet high in saturated fat can increase your risk of heart disease and stroke. Asha Tomlinson, CBC News, Toronto.
You can watch more of Marketplace's Food Fact Check tonight, and if you cut milk from your diet, you'll want to see this one. Tune in at 8 p.m. right here on CBC Television or stream anytime on CBC Gem.
You're going to build a car to beat Ferrari with a Ford. Correct.
Start your engines. An epic racing rivalry is now in theaters. Eli Glasner will have his take on whether Ford versus Ferrari should stay in drive or halt its brakes. We'll bring you the details coming up.
First time Ford Motors has gone to war. We know how to do.
I ever break a promise to you, I will put you in the driver's seat at Le Mans. You just shut your mouth and let me do my thing?
Some of the drama from the movie Ford versus Ferrari. It is based on the fierce rivalry between the Ford Motor Company and Ferrari in the 1960s as the two companies try to win the 24 Hours of Le Mans race. Eli Glasner is here to tell us all about it, and we do remember this one from TIFF, Eli.
Yeah.
So what's the story behind Ford versus Ferrari?
It is about horsepower, tires, and torque, but it's also about corporations. Ford versus Ferrari, but we start with the focus on Ford, led by Henry Ford II, so the actual grandson of Henry Ford. Now, why are we talking about Ford? It's the mid-1960s. People aren't buying Fords the way they used to, so here's the idea from Lee Iacocca. Let's go to Italy, buy Ferrari, and really kind of fix up the image of this company. Now, that doesn't go so well. Here's Iacocca coming back to America to break the news. Take a look.
Mr. Ford, Ferrari has a message for you, sir. What did he say? He said Ford makes ugly little cars in ugly factories. And, he called you fat, sir. We're gonna bury Ferrari at Le Mans.
He called them fat. So there you go. The company is going to war. Now, Le Mans is a race, but not just any race. We're talking 24-hour endurance race. This is a grueling gauntlet. You actually rotate drivers just to be able to make it to that finish line. Now, Carroll Shelby, keep in mind this is all based on a true story. He was one of the few Americans actually won at that race. Texas driver, had to stop driving for health reasons. Now he's a designer, so Ford brings him on board, says, okay, there you go, Shelby, build us a winner. But it ain't that easy. Take a look.
What's it take?
Well, it takes something money can't buy.
Money can buy speed.
What isn't about speed? You need a pure racer behind the wheel of your car. That's Ken Miles.
I don't trust him an inch.
We heard he's difficult. No, Ken's a puppy dog.
Yeah, he's not a puppy dog. That's not a puppy dog mood. They call him the bulldog, and I think that might be why. So you got Matt Damon as Shelby and Christian Bale as Ken Miles. Now, Miles is kind of a horrible human being, but a remarkable driver. He's the kind of driver, he gets behind the wheel, he can feel if a single rivet is out of place. He'll tell the engineer, oh, the airflow over the hood is all wrong. And, you know, any sports movie, it needs to have that mystical moment. Think of Field of Dreams. So I'm going to give you the racing version of Field of Dreams. The scene is Miles and his young son. Now, keep in mind, Miles was born in Britain, but they're standing there on the racetrack at night, and he's talking about the holy grail of racing. Take a look.
Look out there. Out there is the perfect lap. No mistakes. Every gear change, every corner. Perfect. You see it?
I think so.
I think I can see it now. So there you go. Bale is the best thing about this. He dissolves into that role. This guy, he looks like Ichabod Crane covered in motor oil, and he's at his happiest behind the wheel when the car is performing, and he talks to the car. He's hooting and hollering and encouraging it on.
Okay, Bale is great,
Yeah.
but what about the actual film? Do you have to be a race fan for this one to rev your engine, or?
I mean, you shouldn't have to be, but I am. Not actually the sport, but I love my car films. Days of Thunder, Smokey and the Bandit, Cannonball Run. This is the stuff I grew up on. So this movie should be my new favorite. And you know what? It's not. It never really got to top gear for me. And I think the problem is the engine of the story. Again and again, they're showing us he is the best driver. He is unbeatable. He is fearless. Shelby is so innovative. So what's standing in their way? Ford. This is a movie where they're fighting Ford. Ford are afraid of having such an unconventional driver, so it's the backroom shenanigans that kind of take the gas out of this picture. But I want to point out two other great performances, because it's not always about the big stars. Ray McKinnon plays Phil. There he is, tall, skinny guy, pencil mustache. He's the engineer. He's the one who, when the car's not working and they say, Phil, make it happen, Phil gets it done. And McKinnon does this with such grace and economy. Loved what he did there. Keep your eye out for Ray and Tracy Letts. Now, I was in an elevator with Tracy Letts at TIFF. I didn't recognize him because he's one of those guys, he plays everybody. There he is on the right.
Oh, yeah.
So I didn't know, but this is a big shot for him. He gets to be Henry Ford, and every scene, he milks it for all it's worth. So there you go. 3 stars out of 5.
Not too bad, Eli. Still worth seeing.
Not too bad, it's just not too good.
Thank you, Eli.
You're welcome.
We have some breaking news for you out of the city's north end this hour. Toronto's fire chief is about to update the media on a 4-alarm fire in a high-rise building near Jane and Steeles. The fire is on multiple floors, and the chief says a number of people have been rescued. There are no reports of injuries at this time. We will have the latest for you on this tonight at 11. For some, Christmas means a stocking full of gifts, but for many in more remote communities, that may not be the case. A program called Toys for the North is trying to change that, donating more than $100,000 worth of toys to kids in Northern Canada, saying every child deserves a gift this holiday season.
Oh, it's excellent. It's a lot of fun. It's great to see all these toys.
The program's objective is to deliver toys to some of Canada's most remote northern communities who can otherwise not afford or access children's toys, so they get toys for the holiday season. All of the toy companies donate toys to the program at no cost. The toys are then flown on a Hercules to communities in northern Canada. Each toy is individually wrapped by the RCMP. And then, just like Santa, the RCMP works with councils, band leaders, elders, and other community organizations to identify families in need. And they are hand-delivered to families in those communities so they get toys for the holiday season.
On helping pack toys to donate to kids who don't have enough money to afford toys.
The families really appreciate the toys. It really does bring smiles to the children's faces, joys to their family, and really does make them have a much happier holiday season.
Some extra smiles with that this holiday season. Very nice. All right, so Santa Claus Parade is this weekend.
Yes, and you know, we've got one day that's colder than the other of the 2 weekend days, and it's in the right order, meaning Santa's got the bit of warm-up that we're going to see.
On Sunday.
Yeah, it's not that extreme, but, you know, we'll take anything we can get at this time. Overnight tonight, though, anything but the case. Much colder air just pushing in right now, -11, feeling like -20. That's why there is the extreme cold weather alert for the city as well. And then for tomorrow afternoon, -3. We'll see some variable cloud at times, but primarily we've got a lot of sunshine coming in for this weekend, and that's what Santa gets on Sunday. Sunshine and a high around 1 degree,
That
Dwight.
sounds perfect weather for the parade.
Yeah.
That is it for us tonight. Talia Ritchie has you covered tonight. We'll see you back here on Monday. Have a great weekend, everybody.